What's up? I'm Quincy Dawson, and welcome back to the greatest teacher of all time, where I interview teachers of color to highlight their philosophies, strategies, and personalities. Today, I've got Wooly Pierre. What's up, Mr. Pierre?
Howdy, howdy.
Yeah, man. Again, thank you so much for being here. I like how we're doing this little swap between our shows.
I appreciate you.
Yeah. So, you are a middle school math teacher, and one of the big things that you talk about a lot is being the 2%, right? The 2% education. What does that mean exactly?
So, in the United States, number one, the profession of being an educator is a tough one. Number two, there are not a lot of men. And then number three, there are not a lot of Black men. So, in the US, I make up 2% of Black male teachers who teach either math or science.
Okay. And like, what is, I don't know, does that feel like you're like bearing a more responsibility? Like,
In the
isn't it?
begin, yeah, in the beginning, it felt like that a lot. I felt very much as if like I had to be all things all the time because the kiddos didn't see anything else. Now that I've had a couple of years under my belt, this is year 15 for me. Um, I recognize that I can only be me, and that's the best that I can be for my kiddos. So,
Hmm.
with that knowledge of knowing that I am of the 2%, I'm hoping that the more kiddos see me, that hopefully that in the future, then that'll inspire them to come into the profession, but also inspire others who are thinking of coming into the profession to come into it.
Yeah, okay. And that's interesting you say that in feeling you had to do a lot of things, or like you're the only one that the students see, right? Are you one of the only Black teachers at your school, Black male teachers?
At my, yeah, there are two Black Yeah, I'm the only Black male teacher, yeah, at my
Wow.
school. Yeah,
Yeah, right. And so,
yeah,
man, even for me, feeling that like bearing responsibility, right? So I already had like a lot of things I wanted to do at my school in terms of like being the physics teacher, running these science programs, track, cross country, things like that too, robotics. But also that plus the weight I got on me from being, okay, can you be the BSU advisor? And it's
yeah.
like, I'm already doing so much, but like I feel like I got to do that too. Do you get things like that at your school?
I thankfully, again, like I was saying in the beginning, that was me. Like you mentioned, because I ran track as well. I am a blurred, so I was into so many comics, into the science fiction. So there was a club that I ran with that. I love chess, so I ran the chess club as well. So in the beginning, there were all these parts of me that were being pulled, but you only have so much. And recognizing that in order to give, like you also have to give your cup has, in order to give, pour from your cup has to be full. And if you keep giving, and not giving yourself enough time to replenish, then what's eventually going to happen is that you're going to burn out and you're going to dip out, or you're going to start to feel some type of way of like, I can only give 10% to this thing that I really love. I mean, so I had to learn how to be able to say no, and like say no and be okay with saying no, and knowing that it's going to be okay. Like me not doing everything. Like I am not the Superman. I'm not the Batman. I'm just Willie Pierre, and I can do what I can do, and I'll do it the best that I can. But when I can't, I got to be able to say no, and for that to sit well with myself as well as the person who's receiving that no.
Okay. And man, so with that, Mr. Pierre, you kind of are Superman. Because, like, so you're doing all your teacher stuff, right? But in
Yeah,
addition to that, you also have the Chronicles of Mystery, your teacher podcast,
yeah,
which is really cool and I really like it. But I think the most important or different thing that you're doing is that you have a website with a lot of different blog posts that accompanies that,
yeah.
right? And so you basically use that to write about the interviews that you had with teachers and basically just pick things out that inspires you, right?
Exactly right. I didn't have a lot. Again, I keep going back to the beginning because I feel if we're gonna be Superman, that's my genesis story of in the beginning feeling like I had to do everything. And I wish one on my part, I wish I spoke up more and asked questions. And now that we live in this age of YouTube or the age of IG, or the age of the clock app, TikTok, where you can get in contact. I don't have to be at that school where I can meet an individual like yourself. We can politic and we can chop it up like, hey, what's happening with you? What's happening with me? What are the things that are working? And now with the blog, I am just merely saying like, hey, this is what worked for me. These are the little tidbits that I've found that have worked in talking with other individuals who are in the classroom or outside of the classroom, like yourself, and others who have transitioned outside of the classroom. It's just things that I wish I knew. I wish, I wish someone would have told me, such as conversations with like compensation, like, hey, think about this, think about this, think about this at different stages of your life. These are the things that might be important to you. So think about that. Knowing that, hey, if you decide to transition out of the classroom, you are not a failure. You are still able to help kiddos. You are still able to help other individuals. And the beauty of the website is to be able to put that out there and know that it's there, that it's a resource that folks can go to.
And that just goes back to the whole Superman thing, right? Where like you're learning these valuable lessons from these teachers, these principals, people who left the field and stuff. Do you feel like it's your responsibility to write these blog posts to like share it to more people? Like where does that part come in between things you want to do and things you feel like you have to do, you know?
That's a great question.
Because you're learning a lot of valuable things through your interviews,
Yeah,
right?
I think that's where like the scripture of iron sharpens iron comes into play. I recognize that the reason why I may be Superman or an alternate version of him is because there are others who have poured into me. And it just seems right to then be able to like give back to whoever's given to me or to the next generation. Um, and so, yeah, it would, yeah, it would just, it would feel wrong on my part to be like, yo, I've had mentors who have told me like, hey, think about this. I'm not going to tell you what to do, because obviously me being hard-headed as I am, if you told me what to do, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna do my own thing. But here's something to consider, which is what I want to do with Chronicles of Mister, of saying, hey, here are some things that have worked with me. Here are some things that have worked with so and so. Take it as you will, because we recognize and you know that you can be in a classroom, you can have a great lesson plan, and it can go awesome this year, and then you try that same lesson plan next year with a different cohort of kiddos, and it falls flat. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just recognizing that it's not always going to be cookie cutter, that you're going to have to tweak it. You're going to have to rough some edges or round some edges rather, to know like, hey, for this lesson or this particular kiddo, this is what I got to do. Whereas for even like their older brother or younger brother, it didn't work. It's going to have to be different. So recognizing that. And I think that's something, again, the years of being in the field, of knowing that it's not going to be the same all the time. However, you can take those principles and they will apply.
Yeah, man. That
Yeah.
experience definitely attributes to that a lot. Yeah, but maybe going a little further on that, right? And so you're saying you felt like these are things that felt wrong not to share, right? You're
Yeah.
learning all these gems, right? I want to get into one of your articles called Beyond the Classroom: How One Teacher Made a Difference. And this is one where you interviewed a teacher named Marcus, and your article talks about how he helped students create vision boards, help them realize their potential. And I think that's a really good example of a student like going beyond, sorry, not a student, but a teacher going beyond their written responsibilities to do things that benefit their students, right? You personally, what do you think is the responsibility of a teacher? Is it always going above and beyond, like that unwritten phrase, or is it really just what's on paper?
But it's interesting, even that phrase, above and beyond, because what may seem above and beyond to one individual is just like, this is what I do. This is a Monday for me. And
Mm.
so and maybe that's where, like you mentioned a couple of times, the superhero, like Superman doesn't know his own strength until like he has to go up against an opponent who's like, I'm gonna put you to the test. And so there are some of us where we got,
Wait,
we'll call
wait.
it,
Do teachers need to be tested though? Like, come on.
heck yes, heck
They
yes.
need to?
And this is where I'm gonna say yes, and let me explain.
Let's do it.
Yes, and the test is not always going to be the test of like, hey, do you know the content? The test is going to come in the sense of like, for example, year one for me was know the content, know how to teach this content to my kiddos. And my first year was sixth grade. So knowing how I need to use particular illustrations, analogies, whatever, examples for these kiddos to connect to the content, to be able to then access it, to then be able to say, okay, Mr. Pierre, I can demonstrate to you that I understand the standard. So that's number one. Year one for me, that was that. Year two is like similar, but it's like you got to move a little faster. Like it's not a lesson plan that may have taken me 2 days. Now it's going to take me one. Year three is now I know the content, but do I have that relationship with the kiddo? Am I looking to build that relationship with the kiddo? Because if I'm just teaching, then I'm just, I'm a robot in front of them. And that, at least for me, is something that I never wanted to be because I had those teachers. And I'm pretty sure that you've had, and I'm sure your listeners have had like teachers who are just like, I'm here for a paycheck, here's their assignment, Bueller, and then keep it moving. The test comes in, the teacher you were in years 1, 2, and 3, is that the same person that you are in year 4? And the test is going to come to be like, am I doing the same thing over and over again? Or am I seeing how I can make this better? Because when we think of, at least for myself, I'm going to date myself. When I think of a great basketball player, it's not solely the numbers. There's that other intangible of like, do I lift the people around me? And so for me, I saw The Last Dance and I'm like, MJ was awesome. He really was. However, I don't agree with all of his methods, but I'm also not a professional basketball player. So to get back to your question of like the test, do teachers need to be tested? I think yes. And the manner in which they're being tested is, are you pushing yourself to be better? The teacher you are today, is it going to be the same teacher that you are tomorrow? And recognizing that there's a myriad of things that you're going to have to refine, whether it be from the content, whether it be from you creating relationships with your kiddos, whether it be like, all right, now that do I have enough? Am I confident enough in the teaching, in the relationships to then say, yes, I can also run this club. And that's not going to, sap all of my energy and my time because I have these systems, these routines. Does that make sense?
It does, but man, it's like that doesn't happen though. It's like so what you're saying, it's like all that does happen. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
All of it doesn't happen in a year 1 span. Then year 2, I do this. Then year 3, right? It all happens at the
Yes.
same time.
Yes.
Right. And it's like that test is low-key impossible.
Right. And so if you and I were on the same campus and you saw me trying to do everything, would you stay quiet? If you were year 5 or year 6, would you stay quiet, Q?
That's a test. No, I would not.
No, you would not. Now, don't get me wrong. We all know that there are some of those teachers who would stay quiet. And that's where, if you're a new teacher and you see, Q is not going to let so-and-so flounder, I got to pick it up. But then there's also, if this is the culture where everyone is like, you're an island, you're a classroom teacher rather than you're a school teacher, where it's not, the stuff that happens in your class, true, but it's going to affect all of us. And so I can't just keep quiet. I'm going to say something. And if that is the culture that you're like, even if I'm the first person to do that, then it shows the next person, oh snap, right. I'm not just a classroom teacher, I am a school teacher. So that's what I mean by tests of like, it's going to be tests. It's going to be tests of like, do you do something or do you do nothing? When do you do something? When do you do? Because there's also that dance too of like, there are times when I have to like put my hands in my pocket and be like, I gotta let you have that metamorphosis of coming out of the cocoon, because otherwise you need that little bit of pressure to become the butterfly, if you will. You know what I mean? And so it's a delicate dance. Now, and I say this with the experience of 15 years underneath my belt. And I know I made mistakes in the past and I know I'll make mistakes again in the future. But I feel like that's the test that I mean of, I can't. If I see that you have the potential to be great and I hush, like, shame on me. Shame on me.
Yeah, man, I definitely get that. I liked how you wrapped that up and brought it back to the whole team player aspect, right? Yeah. Okay. And so I still want to talk about like the culture, right? But let's talk more about the culture of your classroom, right? Or maybe the culture of the school that teachers create.
Yeah.
So one of your articles again on the website is called How to Create a School Culture Where Kids Feel Seen, right? And this was with an interview with Dr. Mitchell. And you talked about how it's not important that they remember the lessons, but they remember how they feel, right? Can you maybe talk a little more about that? What do you mean by that?
I mean, it was something that Maya Angelou said. And what she said is that folks will not always remember exactly what you say to them, all the interaction that you have with them. However, how they felt when they interacted with you is something that will remain with them forever. Like, again, if I, me and the analogies of sports, of when I think of MJ and I think of game sixes and I think like literally my body, I'm just like, I'm back to being like 10, 11, 12 again, like watching it with my siblings and that camaraderie of him hitting the shot and being like, yes. Or similarly too, sitting in a classroom where a teacher just is talking at us rather than us having a conversation of like, why is that? Like, but I think it's this. I think it's that. Could it be this? Could it be that? And like not being shut down, but being engaged with that. That is what I look to do with my kiddos. Of the first 2 weeks of school is just like get to know me get to know you. We do certain activities that touch on that, but it's really to see like when or how do you communicate with others? How do you communicate with me? Do you see this relationship as me like this sage on the stage and I'm the fountain of knowledge is pouring into you? Or do you see it as, yo, you kiddos know a lot of stuff. I got to make sure that I stay with it so that when I say X, Y, Z, you understand that I mean X, Y, or Z, and that it doesn't get lost in translation. Because I'm sure you've had that where you're having a conversation with someone and you can tell after you've said a certain phrase, like it's gone over their head and you're like, all right, let me backtrack. Where did I lose you? And so to establish that in the beginning so that when kids are lost, they're not going to stay hushed. Like, Mr. Pierre, when you said blah, 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 like you said volume, are you talking about the volume like on a radio? Are you talking about the volume? Oh, okay. So when I say volume, this is what you hear. Is there anyone else who thinks the same thing? That when you hear volume, you're not thinking about length times width times height, and that gives you the volume of this object. You're thinking something else. You're thinking music. All right, what music are you thinking? And so to make those connections, and that's where like the culture comes in. Like the kiddo feels like it's safe to say, I don't know, I don't understand. But that only happens because they know that I see them. They know that they're not going to get roasted. They know that not knowing is okay because plenty of times Mr. Pierre has said and shown them like, oh snap, I made a mistake. Who can help me out? Great, here's the iPad. Where did I make the mistake? Fix it for me. And so we create this culture of we're all helping each other. Again, that iron sharpens iron. And so that's the culture that one should exist in the classroom, but then has to build out to the entire school. Because if you and I are in the same school again, if I come into your classroom, you know, hey, I'm just coming to see greatness. It's not for me to be like, yo, I'm gonna get this, Quincy. I can see when Mr. Dawson gonna make a mistake, and I'm looking to do like a gotcha. It's not about that. It's like you're great. If I'm Superman, then you're Batman, and we're trying to create the Justice League. You know what I mean? And so that's the culture of not just also in the classroom, but also in the entire school. But that happens, going back to what we were saying, like if you see it, you gotta say something or do something.
Mm.
And then allow that conversation to happen afterwards of like, hey, this is why I did such and such, or why I said such and such, and have those check-ins that if I made you feel in some type of way, it may not have been my intent, but if that's the impact, kiddo or colleague, let me say my bad so you know where it's coming from, where I'm coming from, so that in the future, this is not going to be some sort of wall. It's just going to be a little speed bump, and we keep it moving.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's the biggest part too. And not just making the class culture what you want, but also expanding that to the school too, right? Just being vigilant, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Being everybody in the work too.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so that's one of the things of like, at least at my school, I'm at a K through 8. So even though I'm in the middle school, when I have an open block, like I'll go down to the kinders, I'll go down to first grade. Mind you, I only got enough energy for about half an hour with kinder. So anyone who's a elementary school, I give you your props because I don't have that type of energy. But for them to know, oh, this is Mr. Pierre. So in a couple of years when they're in my classroom, it's like, oh, I know who you are, not like a complete stranger. So building that culture of like not just your classroom, but you just mentioned like a school culture is super important as well.
Okay, okay. Wow. Mr. Pierre, you're doing a lot.
I'm trying. I'm trying.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you are, and it's great. I love to see it. I love to see it.
Thank you.
But yeah, again, thank you for all this, sharing your insight on the 2%, your thoughts on the responsibility of a teacher, making the school versus classroom culture. There's some of the reasons why I think you might be one of the greatest teachers of all time.
Oh, I appreciate you, man. Thank you.
Yeah, of course, of course. And also, with the support of Transcendence Children and Family Services, I want to present to you this $100 prepaid gift card to use with your class and your students.
Appreciate you, Mr. Dawson.
Yeah, man, I got you. I got you. So yeah, once the cameras get off, I'll get your address and everything and figure out how to get it to you.
Will do.
Yeah, man. Again, thank you to everyone else for watching The Greatest Teacher of All Time, where I interview teachers of color to highlight their philosophies, strategies, and personalities.